Good evening. They're Bingo, the Groaner, Old Dad, Bing. Harry Lillis Crosby is dead. It happened in Madrid, Spain. He was playing golf with 3 Spanish champions at a club outside town. When the 17th hole, he was stricken, apparently a heart attack. By the time they got him to the hospital, Bing Crosby was dead. He was 73.
In 1983, Bing Crosby's perfect image crumbled when his eldest son revealed the dark truth. Weekly weigh-ins that ended in tears, a father's rage behind closed doors, and 4 sons who turned to the alcohol seeking escape. As White Christmas played on radios across America, the Crosby boys were living a nightmare. This is the true story of Hollywood's favorite father and the sons who paid the price for his fame.
It's a popular name, of course, here around the Inland Northwest, Bing Crosby. One man has spent years writing about him.
That's right, Gary Giddens is here with us this morning. You just released a new biography, and not your first piece on Bing here, but you have a new piece here. And what does this version focus on here?
Bing Crosby was born as Harry Lillis Crosby Jr. on May 3, 1903, in Tacoma, Washington. He was the 4th of 7 kids in a hard-working family. His dad worked as a bookkeeper at a brewery, and his mom kept their busy household running smoothly. When Bing was 7, he became obsessed with a comic strip called The Bingville Bugle in the local paper. A neighbor teased him and started calling him Bingo from Bingville. Soon, everyone just called him Bing, and the name stuck for life. When Bing was 6, his family bought a phonograph, a music player. He couldn't get enough of it. He spent hours listening to records, especially ones by Al Jolson, who became his hero. At age 14, Bing got a summer job as a helper at Spokane's auditorium. He got to see live performances by famous acts, including Al Jolson. Watching Jolson perform was unforgettable for Bing. He later said it was electric, and it sparked his dream to entertain people. Bing went to Gonzaga University in 1920 to study law, but music slowly took over his life. He joined the school's drama club and played drums, spending more time on stage than in class. During this time, he met Al Rinker, whose sister, Mildred Bailey, was already a jazz star. Al noticed Bing's talent and asked him to join his music group. This was a turning point for Bing. His family wanted him to become a lawyer, but Bing decided to follow his passion for music instead. In 1923, Bing and Al started a band called the Musicalators. The band had high school kids in it, but Bing, at 20, didn't mind. He sang and played drums. They quickly became popular in Spokane, performing at school dances, local clubs, and even on the radio. They earned good money, and Bing realized he could make a living with music. He decided to leave college during his final year to focus on performing full-time. In 1925, Bing and Al took a big risk. They left Spokane and drove to Los Angeles in a beat-up old car that kept breaking down. The trip took weeks, and they stopped in cities like Seattle and Portland to perform and earn gas money. Just before reaching Los Angeles, their car broke down for good. Mildred Bailey had to come and rescue them. Despite the rough start, they were determined to make it. In Los Angeles, they went to see Mildred perform at a nightclub. Through her connections, they got an audition with a big theatrical company that booked acts across the West Coast. They were hired right away and began performing regularly. This helped Bing sharpen his skills and build confidence. When Bing Crosby was 23, his life changed forever. In 1926, he and his singing partner, Al Rinker, met Paul Whiteman, the most famous band leader in America. Whiteman's orchestra was the best in the country, and he was looking for something fresh. Bing and Al joined his group, and Bing made his first performance with Whiteman on December 6, 1926, in Chicago. He earned $150 a week, which was a lot of money back then. But at first, their act wasn't very popular. and Whiteman almost let them go. To fix this, he added a third member to their act, a pianist named Harry Barris. The three of them became the Rhythm Boys, and their harmony quickly won over audiences. In 1928, their song Mississippi Mud sold 300,000 copies in 3 months. Bing's deep, smooth voice started to shine, and he developed a style that made him stand out. The group toured big theaters and learned from jazz legends like Bix Beiderbecke. But as Bing became more famous, there were problems. He partied too much and drank a lot, which caused tension with Whiteman. In 1930, the Rhythm Boys left the orchestra, and Bing started thinking about going solo. In 1928, Bing had his first big hit. It was a song called Old Man River from the musical Showboat. The original song was slow and emotional, but Bing made it faster and more upbeat. Some people didn't like this change because it made the song feel less serious. Still, it became a huge success, selling 500,000 copies in 6 months and staying at #1 for 4 weeks. Bing's version showed how good he was at making songs sound new and exciting. The recording also had a jazz solo by Bix Beiderbecke, which made it even more special. This hit made Bing even more popular and opened new doors for him. Later in his career, Bing recorded other versions of Old Man River, showing how much his style grew over time. In 1931, Bing decided to go solo, but it wasn't easy. He was still performing with the Rhythm Boys in Los Angeles, but they got into a fight over pay and quit their jobs. This caused legal trouble with the musicians' union, and Bing wasn't allowed to perform with union musicians in the city for a while. At the same time, his personal life was messy. He had married actress Dixie Lee in 1930, but by March 1931, she filed for divorce. They eventually got back together, but it was a hard time for Bing. Even with all these problems, his talent was impossible to ignore. Radio executives noticed him, and William Paley, the president of CBS, offered him his own radio show. Bing asked for $1,500 a week, a huge amount, and he got it. His show, 15 Minutes with Bing Crosby, started on September 2, 1931, though it was delayed for 2 days because Bing got laryngitis from over-rehearsing. The show aired 6 nights a week, and people loved his relaxed singing style. By the end of the year, Bing had 10 songs in the top 50 and was on his way to becoming America's favorite singer. Bing's radio show was a turning point. It made him a household name.
He was dad to me, so I knew he was special on the outside because of the rest of the world, but for me, he was my hero and my friend, and taught me how to hunt and fish and play baseball and do all those things that you teach your son to do.
Each episode featured Bing's warm voice singing popular songs with simple arrangements that let his personality shine. Sponsors quickly noticed his success, and the American Tobacco Company paid him $1,500 a week to promote their cigars. Bing's radio success also led to his first movie role in The Big Broadcast in 1932. By the end of 1931, Bing Crosby was no longer just another singer. He was a star. Bing Crosby's rise to stardom began unexpectedly in 1932. Paramount was working on a movie called The Big Broadcast, originally planned for comedians Burns and Allen. One day, studio executives overheard Bing singing nearby. His voice was so beautiful that they decided to make him the star instead. It was a bold move for a 29-year-old with no film experience. During filming, the director made Bing record the song Please 147 times to get it perfect. While doing this, a sound engineer created the first boom microphone because Bing swayed too much while singing. The movie premiered in October 1932, but Bing was so nervous he drank a whole bottle of brandy. At the premiere, he stumbled and slurred his words, and people joked it was the night Bing sang sideways. Despite the hiccups, the movie was a huge success, earning $2.1 million, which was a fortune back then. Bing became an instant star, even starting a hairstyle trend called Bing Bobs, and Paramount sold over 500,000 bottles of hair products inspired by him. In the 1930s and 1940s, Bing became one of Hollywood's biggest stars. He made 79 movies during this time, almost 4 movies every year. His hard work and love for coffee, he drank 17 cups a day on set, kept him going. In 1934, his film She Loves Me Not made the song Love in Bloom famous. Fans loved the movie so much they started buying gardenias, just like Bing's character gave in the film. His 1940 movie, If I Had My Way, had an odd effect. Fans mailed Bing their teeth because of a scene where his character loses a tooth. By the end of the year, he had received over 23,000 teeth, which he donated to dental schools. 2 of his biggest hits were Going My Way and The Bells of St. Mary's. These films made Bing the top box office star for 2 years in a row, something no one else had done before. New York even threw a parade to celebrate him, with millions of pieces of confetti bearing his face. It was such a mess that the city had to create new rules for parades after that. Bing's Oscar win for Going My Way in 1944 was a big moment. He played a kind-hearted priest, and his performance inspired hundreds of young men to write letters saying they wanted to join the priesthood. The Oscars night itself was full of surprises. When Bing went on stage to accept the award, he tripped and accidentally hit Cary Grant on the head with the Oscar. Cary joked about the bruise for years. During his speech, Bing made a small mistake, calling the Academy by a funny name, which ended up becoming their official title later. Decades after his win, it was revealed that Bing had tied with his co-star Barry Fitzgerald for Best Actor. The winner was decided with a coin toss, and Bing won by calling heads, though he didn't even know about it until much later. One of Bing's most famous projects was the road movie series with Bob Hope. These comedies, made between 1940 and 1962, became legendary. The idea for the series started as a bet between Bing and Bob. They joked about making a funny travel movie, and a Paramount executive decided to turn it into a film. The first movie, Road to Singapore, was made quickly, with much of the dialogue improvised. Bing and Bob's chemistry made the series a hit. In fact, their humor was so sharp that sometimes they joked about the film's budget right in the movie. Fans loved their playful style, and some even tried talking back to them in theaters. The road movies were so popular, they boosted tourism to locations featured in the films, and even inspired the U.S. government to ask Crosby and Hope to be ambassadors of mirth. Though they declined, their chemistry and humor left a lasting mark, with lines like, "Fancy meeting you here," and "He went that-a-way," becoming everyday sayings. Bing Crosby changed radio forever by using magnetic tape to record his shows. In 1947, Crosby was tired of performing live every day. He wanted more time and control over his work. That's when he learned about a new invention: magnetic tape recorders. Jack Mullen, a U.S. Army officer, had found these recorders in Germany after World War II. He brought 2 machines back to the U.S., took them apart, and rebuilt them. Mullen showed the tape recorder to Crosby on June 10, 1947. Crosby immediately saw how useful it could be. At the time, Crosby had to do live radio shows twice a day to match different time zones. It was exhausting. With a tape recorder, he could record once, edit it, and play it later. But there was a problem. Big networks like NBC and CBS didn't like the idea of pre-recorded shows. They thought live radio sounded better. Crosby didn't let that stop him. He left NBC and joined ABC, a smaller network. They agreed to let him use the tape recorder. On October 1st, 1947, his show Philco Radio Time became the first pre-recorded radio show ever. This changed everything. Now, Crosby could fix mistakes, do retakes, and make his show sound perfect. His team even saved audience laughter to use later, which became the first laugh tracks. This wasn't just good for Crosby. It changed how radio and TV worked. Soon, everyone started using tape recording. Crosby also helped improve the technology. He gave $50,000 to a small company called Ampex. This money helped them build the Model 200, the first high-quality tape recorder in the U.S. Crosby got the first two machines for his shows.
Well, in part, it's ironic to me that after spending 2 decades at this and interviewing hundreds of people, virtually everyone who was still alive who knew him, who worked with him, going through the archives, going through his correspondence, it turns out that Crosby was a lot more like the guy that everybody thought he was in this country in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, amazing half-century career.
Crosby's help didn't stop at radio. He gave an Ampex recorder to Les Paul, a famous musician. Les Paul used it to create multi-track recording, which let artists record layers of sound. This changed music forever. Crosby also encouraged Ampex to work on video recording. In 1951, his company showed the first videotape recorder. It wasn't ready to sell yet, but it inspired Ampex to keep working. By 1956, they made the first practical video recorder. Meanwhile, Bing Crosby and Dixie Lee met in November 1928 at a Hollywood party. Dixie was just 19, a rising star at Fox Studios, while Bing, at 26, was still trying to make a name for himself. Their first meeting was short, but in 1929, they met again at another Hollywood party. This time, Bing was completely charmed by her. Their relationship moved fast. Bing would often fall asleep on the swing outside Dixie's beach house after late-night performances, still wearing his tuxedo. At first, Dixie thought Bing was a bit spoiled and odd, especially with his yellow socks, but she eventually fell for him. They got married on September 29, 1930, less than a year after reconnecting. Their marriage didn't start smoothly. Just 6 months later, Dixie shocked everyone by saying they were separating because they couldn't get along. People in Hollywood couldn't believe it. But within a week, they got back together. Bing rushed to Tijuana, where Dixie was on a trip, after one of her friends asked him to. They patched things up and stayed married, though their relationship was full of ups and downs until Dixie's death in 1952. Bing and Dixie had 4 sons. Their first, Gary, was born in 1933. Then came the twins, Dennis and Philip, in 1934, and finally Lindsay in 1938. From the outside, they looked like the perfect Hollywood family. But things were tough behind the scenes. Bing was always busy with his career, traveling for tours, making movies, and doing radio shows. This left Dixie alone to take care of the kids. At the same time, Dixie was struggling with alcoholism, which made life even harder for her and the family. Dixie's drinking started at Hollywood parties, where she tried to keep up with Bing and others. But it got worse over time. She became more isolated, stepping away from her own career and avoiding public life. By the 1940s, her drinking had taken over. Friends said she was shy and felt she didn't measure up to the talented people around her. Alcohol became her way to cope. She even started drinking secretly at night, sneaking to the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed. Her health began to suffer. In 1945, she was rushed to the hospital, and while the public was told it was a respiratory infection, there were rumors it might have been an overdose. Bing and Dixie's marriage had its struggles. At one point in 1941, they even considered divorce, but they stayed together, partly because of their Catholic faith and their kids. Bing admitted later that he was barely home during those years, often gone for long stretches. This put even more pressure on Dixie, who was left to manage everything on her own. In 1952, Dixie was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Her doctors decided not to tell her how serious it was. Bing, meanwhile, was in Paris for a movie shoot when she passed away on November 1st, just days before her 43rd birthday. Bing wasn't there for her final moments, and her funeral became a media frenzy, with photographers swarming the event. It was a sad and chaotic end to her life. Dixie's struggles with addiction and the challenges of their marriage showed that their perfect life wasn't what it seemed. Her death left Bing devastated and haunted by the choices they both made. It was a tragic chapter in Bing's life, adding a sense of sadness to his otherwise successful career. However, Bing Crosby was a very strict father, and it all started with how he was raised. He grew up in Spokane, Washington, in a Catholic family where discipline was everything. His dad, Harry, was serious and expected a lot from him. Because of this, Bing believed that children needed tough rules to grow into good adults. When Bing became a dad in the 1930s, he treated his 4 sons from his first marriage the same way he had been treated. Even though Bing was a huge star, he made sure his sons didn't grow up spoiled. He set rules for everything, from how they acted to how much they weighed. He even made them weigh themselves regularly and punished them if they gained too much. This was because Bing had struggled with his own weight and image as a Hollywood actor. At home, Bing wasn't the kind of dad who hugged his kids or said, "I love you." He thought showing love would make them weak. To make things worse, Bing was gone a lot for work, so the house often felt cold and full of fear. Bing also used physical punishments, which later became a big controversy. He had a leather belt with metal studs, and he would use it to punish his sons when they misbehaved. Gary, the oldest son, wrote in his memoir about a time when Bing caught him sneaking alcohol. Gary was 16, and Bing was so angry that he beat him with the studded belt. This happened right before Gary's high school graduation, leaving him emotionally scarred. Bing also embarrassed his kids in public. Gary remembered Bing calling him barrel ass in front of a crowd, making fun of his weight. Sadly, all 4 sons from Bing's first marriage struggled with alcohol. Their mom, Dixie Lee, was also an alcoholic, and drinking was a normal part of their home. Gary started drinking young and would sneak alcohol from the family liquor cabinet. By his 20s, he was drinking 2 quarts of vodka every day, which hurt his career and relationships. He eventually went to rehab in 1967 and later worked with Alcoholics Anonymous. Dennis and Philip also drank heavily, and it caused problems in their lives. In the early 1990s, the Crosby family faced heartbreaking tragedies that changed their lives forever. Lindsay Crosby, the youngest of Bing Crosby's 4 sons, passed away in December 1989 at the age of 51. He was found in his home in Calabasas, California. Lindsay had been going through incredibly tough times. He discovered that the inheritance he had counted on to support his family had been lost. This financial crisis, along with his long struggle with mental health and alcohol issues, was too much for him. Lindsay had been married 3 times and found it difficult to maintain steady work, often relying on his father's fame to find opportunities in the entertainment world. His passing left his family and friends shocked and heartbroken.
Icon Bing Crosby's grandson is paying homage to his grandfather by raising money and doing the one thing Bing Crosby was most known for. Our Dave Summers was able to catch up with Phil Crosby Jr. about this event.
Less than 2 years later, In May 1991, Dennis Crosby, one of the twin brothers, also passed away at the age of 56. He had been struggling emotionally after Lindsay's loss and was dealing with his own challenges, including the pain of a recent divorce. Like Lindsay, Dennis had faced a lifetime of personal struggles, including mental health battles and difficulties with alcohol. His passing was another devastating blow to the family and highlighted the immense pressures and challenges faced by the children of a global star like Bing Crosby. These two heartbreaking losses, so close together, deeply affected their brothers, Gary and Philip, as well as Bing's second family with Catherine Grant. In 1983, Gary Crosby, Bing's eldest son, shared a shocking memoir called Going My Own Way. This book gave a behind-the-scenes look at their family life, and it painted a very different picture from the wholesome public image Bing was known for. Gary claimed that Bing was a distant and strict father who used physical punishment to discipline his children. He described growing up in a home filled with harsh rules and little affection. One of the most striking stories was about Bing weighing Gary weekly and punishing him if he gained weight, calling him unkind names like bucket butt. Gary also opened up about his struggles with alcohol, which he believed were connected to the challenges of his upbringing. The book shocked the world, and fans of Bing Crosby were left questioning everything they thought they knew about him. While some people defended Bing, saying his parenting style wasn't unusual for the time, others felt betrayed by the revelations. The media frenzy surrounding the book reshaped Bing's legacy, tarnishing the image of the beloved crooner. The Crosby family itself became divided. Lindsay supported Gary's claims, but Philip, one of the twins, strongly disagreed. He believed Bing was a good father who did his best in raising his children. Philip often spoke publicly to defend Bing, calling Gary's claims unfair and inaccurate. In interviews, he described Bing as a strict but caring parent who provided for his family and wanted his children to grow up grounded, despite their privileged upbringing. Philip shared warm memories of fishing trips with Bing and said their father showed his love through actions rather than words. He also emphasized that Bing worked hard to set up trust funds and create opportunities for his children, and he felt their struggles as adults were not Bing's fault. Bing Crosby married actress Catherine Grant on October 24, 1957, in a surprising Las Vegas wedding that caught everyone off guard. Bing was 54 and Catherine was 23, with a 30-year age gap that raised a lot of eyebrows. Their love story began in 1953 at Paramount Studios, where Catherine accidentally ran into Bing while rushing to deliver costumes. She dropped everything, including her tennis racket, and Bing smoothly said, "What's the hurry, Tex?" That was the start of a long and complicated romance. Bing proposed to Catherine that same year, but their relationship was anything but steady. Bing had a habit of disappearing without explanation and canceling wedding plans. Once, he even called off the wedding because he forgot his toupee. Another time, it was because of a romantic situation involving another woman. During this period, Bing was also linked to Grace Kelly, which added more drama. For 4 years, they kept breaking up and getting back together. Bing wrote Catherine 5 letters before she agreed to give him another chance. Their wedding was as dramatic as their relationship. They flew to Las Vegas with Bing's driver and Catherine's friend, trying to avoid reporters. To throw them off, they pretended they were going to Yarrington, Nevada, but instead returned to Las Vegas and got married at Queen Anne's Church. The priest locked the doors, which wasn't allowed in Catholic weddings, and only 2 altar boys were there as witnesses. Bing gave Catherine a ring he had quickly bought, and they celebrated with scrambled eggs and champagne. Later, reporters who had been chasing them joined the celebration. Their marriage, which started in such an unusual way, lasted 20 years until Bing died in 1977. Despite the odds, their love became one of Hollywood's lasting stories. Bing and Catherine had 3 children together. Their first child, Harry Lillis Crosby III, was born on August 8, 1958. Harry grew up differently from Bing's older sons. Instead of being pushed into entertainment, he was encouraged to explore other interests. Harry ended up blending careers in acting and finance, later earning an MBA and building a life outside the spotlight. On September 14, 1959, they welcomed their second child, Mary Frances Crosby. Mary was Bing's only daughter, and she had a special bond with him. She appeared in Bing's famous Christmas specials as a child, but focused on acting as she grew up. In 1979, she became a household name for her role in the TV show Dallas, where her character became famous for shooting J.R. Ewing in one of TV's most watched moments. Their youngest child, Nathaniel Patrick Crosby, was born on October 29, 1961. Nathaniel became a talented golfer and made Bing proud by winning the U.S. Amateur Championship in 1981 at just 19. He also played for the U.S. in big tournaments like the Eisenhower Trophy and Walker Cup. Though he tried professional golf for a while, he eventually returned to amateur competition. Bing's second family was very different from his first. With his first wife, Dixie Lee, Bing had 4 sons, and his parenting style was strict and harsh. His eldest son, Gary, wrote a memoir in 1983, where he revealed that Bing used to discipline them with a metal-studded belt. The public was shocked, and Bing's reputation suffered. But with Catherine and their children, Bing was much softer and more involved. Mary later said Bing was the best father, who was always present in their lives. He took Harry hunting, taught Nathaniel to play golf, and even took Mary on a hunting trip to Africa. Bing's older sons noticed the difference. Gary once said he would have loved to do things with Bing, like going to Australia with Louis Armstrong, but those opportunities weren't there for him. The 2 sets of children didn't have much of a relationship and grew up like strangers. Catherine defended Bing, saying he tried his best as a father, but had been influenced by his strict Jesuit upbringing, which taught him not to show affection. When Bing died suddenly on October 14, 1977, after playing golf in Spain, it caused a lot of family tension. His will left most of his $50 million estate to Catherine and their 3 children, while his older sons only received trust funds that they couldn't access until they were 65. Gary challenged the will in court, claiming Bing had been influenced by Catherine, but the will was upheld. Later, there were more legal battles over royalties and rights, but most of these were resolved after years of fighting. Bing Crosby's life was full of love, mistakes, and change. Despite the challenges, his second family gave him a chance to grow and become a better father. His legacy remains complicated, but his impact on music, film, and his family is unforgettable.